Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Francois.
I've heard you before explain trauma in this way. Could you explain it to us again, please?
Happy to. So, Francois, I've been interested in working with trauma, and it's been many years I've been looking for and exploring different ways of working with trauma. And this explanation was given in one of these explorations of working with trauma, and I've adapted it to AIT, and I find it very, very workable. And I've stayed with it in all my years of loving and working with AIT. Now, I used this explanation when I was working with clients, and many of my clients were children, and this explanation made sense to them, and it made sense to adults as well. But it's very simple so that it's understandable. It's coming from the basic premise of all energy and trauma psychologies, which is that trauma is experienced in the mind and in the body, and that it gets stuck in the mind and in the body. And that we're realizing that just talking about the trauma, while helpful to make sense of it, is not enough to remove what feels like a frozen nub of trauma within the system. But all the trauma methods and energy methods, I think, are doing something like this, where they are unfreezing the frozen core or nub of the trauma. We are also coming from a positive psychology position where we work on the assumption that we are naturally a self-healing, self-regulating system, if it's at all possible. And I say system because it's the mind, and it's the body, and it's the conscious, and it's the unconscious. The whole system works to self-heal and self-regulate all the time naturally. And the self-healing and self-regulating is happening automatically. We don't have to think about it. And one of the things that stops this from happening is trauma. Trauma within the system is one of the things that will stop the self-healing and self-regulating. And so one of the things that many of the trauma methods are doing are unfreezing or releasing the trauma and stepping back and allowing the system to start up again with the self-healing and self-regulating. So a very sweet, simple explanation of this could be, for example, if you cut your finger, there's a cut, would you have to say to your finger, please heal?
No, I wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't. It would actually start healing on its own, and you don't have to do anything to make it heal. It would be ideal if you kept it clean and you let it rest, but beyond that, you can't do anything to make it heal. If you keep looking at it, that's fine. If you stick your finger in it, it's going to make it worse. Your finger knows what to do, and you let it get on with it. So that's with self-healing, self-regulating. But what would happen, Francois, if you cut your finger, and let's say it was cut by glass, and there were little pieces of glass left in that finger? Would that finger heal?
Probably not.
It wouldn't. Actually, it would try and heal, but it would make a big mess. It would get swollen and septic and painful, and eventually all you can think about is my sore finger, and I can't do this in my life, and I can't do that in my life because of my sore finger. And what's happening with trauma is the equivalent of glass in the system, and it's the same thing. We eventually can't shift it, and it takes over. And what we need to do is say, there's glass in my finger. Go to a very nice doctor, says, but there's glass in your finger. I need to remove it. I need you to be brave. We're going to capture it and take out the glass. It's going to be extra sore for a few seconds. Are you ready? And then they take out the glass. There's more glass. I'm going to take out another piece of glass. And we would take out all the glass from that particular cut. And when all the glass is gone, maybe we need to clear up the infection, big stitches, big dressing, and that finger can now start healing. To me, my understanding of trauma is that it's the same as glass in the system, and that what we're needing to do is remove the glass from the system, and I think all the trauma methods, one way or another, are somehow removing the glass, the trauma glass from the system. EMDR is doing that, EFT is doing that, and AIT, I'm very sure, is doing just that. We're removing glass from the system. I also find this explanation is very useful in the course of the therapy to explain part of what we're doing. So one of the things we do in AIT, and as far as I'm aware, it's done in all the other trauma or energy methods, which is that we rate the SUDs, the subjective units of disturbance or distress. We rate the trauma charge in the system now in relation to this particular trauma or this particular cut. And what I like about the finger and glass analogy is that it explains, well, if the trauma charge is a 10, it's equivalent to saying there are 10 little pieces of glass in the finger. And with AIT, we rate after every round. So we would say it's a rating of 10, we would do a round of AIT, and we would come back and rate it again. And now we could say, oh, it's a 7, which means we've taken out 3 little pieces of glass, which is wonderful, but not good enough. We would do another round. Okay, rate it again. Now there are 4 pieces of glass left. Okay, not good enough. We would do another round. Now there's 1 piece of glass left. Even 1 piece of glass is not good enough, because that would stop the healing. You need to take it all out. 1 more round, there's no glass left. That's wonderful. This finger can now begin to heal. When there's no glass, it doesn't mean that the finger has healed. It means that the finger can now begin to heal. And so I'm saying to a client at the end of the session, when the rating is at 0, does not mean that this particular issue has been healed. It means it can now begin to heal. And I recommend to clients that they be gentle and aware of it, that for the next 24, 48 hours, their system is going to be working very hard on healing this trauma now that it's possible. I also think it's useful to distinguish between rating of trauma charge, which is the glass, and the rating of emotion, which is not trauma, it's just emotion. And emotion, like everything else in our system, will self-heal and self-regulate if it's possible. But if there's trauma attached to it, it will not self-heal and self-regulate. And so the emotion is stuck and replays. And by the end of the session, we may have more emotion, but we're not worried about that because it'll regulate if the trauma charge is gone. And so I distinguish between what's the trauma charge and we talk about the emotion. And that's very, very helpful for clients. The last thing that I would refer to with this finger in explaining trauma with clients is I would say, if your finger's been cut and it hasn't healed properly, either it's painful or if it's partly healed, you've got this big problematic scar that is stopping you using your finger, and we need to still remove the glass. Once the glass is out and the finger heals, the truth is, if there was a cut, there's likely to be a scar. There's been a trauma, there's going to be a scar. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's still there, but the difference is you would look at it, it would heal nicely, and you'd have a nice, neat little scar that allows you to use your finger, that you can live your life, that it's not painful for you all the time in the moment, and you can look at it and you think, this is what happened to me, and I have survived it and recovered from it. So there's an acknowledgement that the trauma happened, and it's in the past, and we can move forward. So I love this little explanation, and clients seem to like it. It just makes it manageable and workable. And so I'm happy to share this with you, Francois.
Great, thank you very much. This is a really great analogy, and I'm sure this is going to be helpful to our viewers and to the AIT therapist community. Thank you.